Canada built some of the most iconic vacation destinations in North America, places where generations escaped for summer and winter. Grand resorts, amusement parks, neon-lit highways, and World Fair grounds once packed with celebrities, families, and millions of visitors. Today, many are left to decay, redevelopment, or memory alone. We're counting down 10 of these lost vacation capitals, exploring how economic shifts, disasters, and changing travel habits erased entire tourism economies almost overnight. Starting at number 10, with a lakeside amusement park that once drew over 1 million visitors a year. In the 10th place, Crystal Beach Amusement Park once stood as Ontario's lakeside playground. Opened in 1888 on the shore of Lake Erie, the park became a summer ritual for families across southern Ontario and western New York. By the late 1950s, it drew crowds topping 1.2 million visitors each year. The boardwalk buzzed with carnival games. The smell of fried treats hung in the air, and the wooden Comet roller coaster became a legend in its own right. For decades, a single main road funneled holiday traffic straight to the park's gates, making it a regional magnet. But in 1972, a highway realignment diverted travelers away, cutting passing traffic by 40% almost overnight. Attendance dropped sharply, and the park never recovered its former crowds. The final blow came in 1988, when a fire sparked by an electrical short destroyed the Comet coaster, injuring 4 firefighters and leaving a gaping silence where laughter once echoed. Today, only faint traces of the old Midway remain, memories washed up on a quiet shoreline. Number 9. The Northlander Motor Inn chain once formed a web of hospitality that stretched across northern Ontario's highway corridors. From the mid-1950s through 1970, 34 inns sprang up along a 1,200-kilometer route, each marked by glowing neon signs that promised a warm bed and a hot meal to road-tripping families and long-haul drivers. At its peak, the Northlander hosted an 80,000-person festival in 1968, a grassroots celebration of frontier optimism and car culture. These motels became landmarks in their own right, staffed by locals who swapped stories with travelers and serving as nightly gathering spots in remote towns. The entire network thrived on the steady pulse of highway traffic. But everything changed in 1992 when a new bypass diverted 60% of vehicles away from the Northlander corridor. Corporate filings show a swift drop in occupancy, and oral histories from former staff recall the silence that settled in once busy lobbies. Today, most Northlander sites are shuttered or torn down, their neon signs dark, and only scattered foundations remind passers-by of a time when the open road promised adventure and community. 8th place, Mirabel International Airport stands as Canada's most ambitious aviation project, and its most haunting failure. Opened in 1975, Mirabel was designed to handle 50 million passengers a year, a futuristic mega-hub set amid the forests of Quebec. Planners envisioned a gateway for the world, with runways stretching to the horizon and a glass terminal that gleamed with optimism. But the crowds never came. By 1982, annual passenger numbers barely reached 2 million, less than 5% of its capacity. Federal directives split air traffic between Mirabel and Dorval, while funding shifts and the lack of a promised high-speed rail link left travelers stranded by distance and inconvenience. As airlines retreated, the vast terminal echoed with emptiness. In 1997, demolition crews began razing Terminal A, erasing the centerpiece of a dream that never materialized. Today, aerial views reveal only fragments of runways and the ghostly footprint of a project that once promised to reshape Canadian travel, now remembered as a monument to overreach and lost opportunity. Number 7. Pavilion. Amusement Park brought the spirit of carnival to the heart of the prairies. Opening its gates in 1955 on the edge of Winnipeg's Assiniboine Park, Pavilion quickly became a magnet for families across Manitoba and beyond. At its peak in 1970, the park welcomed 850,000 visitors, more than the city's entire population at the time, drawn by the dazzling lights of the Midway, the laughter echoing from the Starlight roller coaster, and the promise of summer freedom. School groups, church picnics, and out-of-town relatives all converged for a taste of prairie adventure. But the park's fortunes were tightly bound to the rhythms of the local economy. When the early 1980s recession hit, Manitoba households saw a 12% drop in disposable income by 1984, shrinking the crowds and thinning the lines at the gates. National parks and newer attractions started pulling visitors away, and the city-run pavilion struggled to keep pace with rising costs and falling ticket sales. Staff interviews from the CBC archives recall the quiet years, empty rides spinning in the wind, maintenance deferred, and the once bustling arcade echoing with silence. In 1991, after nearly 4 decades as Manitoba's summer playground, Pavilion Amusement Park closed for good. Today, only faded postcards and scattered footings in the grass hint at the prairie's lost carnival, a reminder of how quickly a community's favorite escape can vanish when the world outside its gates begins to change. Number 6. White Otter Castle rises from the northern Ontario wilderness as a monument to one man's improbable dream and the slow unraveling of roadside tourism. In 1905, James Alexander McEwait began hauling stones by hand to the shore of White Otter Lake, determined to build a castle where there was no road, no town, and no audience but the pine trees. Over 15 years, he crafted a 30-room stone mansion, complete with turrets and arched windows, hoping it would become a magnet for travelers seeking adventure off the beaten path. By the 1930s, as highway travel boomed, up to 75 visitors a day made the trip by boat or rough trail to marvel at the castle's eccentric silhouette. But the tides of tourism shifted again in 1965, when Highway 6 was realigned, cutting off the main route and leaving the castle stranded from the flow of summer traffic. The property became entangled in a decades-long legal dispute, culminating in a 1979 lawsuit over ownership. With the crowds gone, the castle fell into disrepair, its stone walls weathered by harsh winters and neglect. In 1992, Ontario granted it provincial heritage status, but the castle now stands mostly empty, a whimsical relic echoing with stories of ambition and isolation. Where once it promised a roadside spectacle, White Otter Castle survives as a quiet reminder of how personal vision can fade when the roads themselves change course. Number 5. The Expo 67 site in Montreal once stood as the epicenter of Canada's global ambitions. In the summer of 1967, 50 million visitors crossed the bridges to man-made islands on the St. Lawrence, drawn by a spectacle of futuristic architecture, cultural pavilions, and the promise of a modern nation on display. For 6 months, the grounds buzzed with optimism. 30 pavilions from around the world, the geodesic dome of the U.S. Pavilion shimmering in the sun, and the bold forms of Habitat 67 redefining urban living. Newspapers hailed it as the most successful World's Fair of the 20th century, a place where school children, celebrities, and heads of state wandered side by side. Yet the closing ceremony marked the start of a slow unraveling. Within 3 years, budget cuts and shifting priorities led to the demolition of more than half the major pavilions. By 1970, 30 structures had been razed, with only a handful, like Habitat 67, escaping the wrecking ball. The iconic U.S. Dome was gutted by fire in 1976, leaving only its steel skeleton behind. Today, the site survives as a patchwork of parkland, bike paths, and scattered remnants, its grandeur fragmented and its crowds long dispersed. Expo 67's legacy endures in memory and a few surviving landmarks, but the vision of a permanent city of the future has faded, replaced by the quiet of reclaimed green space and the ghostly outlines of a vanished World's Fair. Number 4. Six Flags Worlds of Adventure Canada stands as a monument to ambition that never touched reality. In the early 1990s, Six Flags unveiled a $300 million plan for a massive theme park just outside Toronto, promising a North American destination to rival the likes of Orlando. The company's 1991 acquisition of a 400-acre site for $150 million set expectations sky high, with glossy renderings of coasters, water rides, and a branded resort hotel. Feasibility studies projected millions of visitors, and local news buzzed about jobs and tourism dollars. But the dream collided with the hard edge of a deepening recession. By 1995, Canada's theme park market shrank as household spending on recreation dropped 18%. Six Flags, already stretched by over-leveraged U.S. acquisitions, began to falter. In 1996, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, leaving only a few partially constructed rides and a single rusting roller coaster track on the property. Where families once imagined summer thrills, weeds overtook the empty lots. The land was quietly sold off in parcels, and the promise of a Canadian theme park capital faded into corporate memory. Today, the only traces of the project are scattered blueprints and the skeleton of a coaster, a stark reminder of how even the boldest visions can be undone by economic tides and boardroom decisions. Coming to the top three, Prince Edward Island's drive-in corridor once defined the rhythm of summer nights on the island. By the late 1960s, the Trans-Canada Highway from Charlottetown to Summerside shimmered with neon. 12 drive-in theaters lined the route, their glowing signs casting reflections on the rain-slicked pavement and drawing as many as 1,200 cars each evening. Teenagers packed into Chevrolets, families unfolded lawn chairs beside tailgates, and the scent of buttered popcorn mingled with salt air drifting off the Northumberland Strait. The first drive-in opened in 1954, and by the early 1970s, these roadside cinemas were more than entertainment. They were a gathering place, a ritual that stitched together island communities and summer tourists alike. But the golden age of the drive-in was always tied to the flow of traffic and the thrill of the open road. The arrival of the Confederation Bridge in 1997, linking PEI directly to the mainland, redrew the map overnight. Suddenly, the old coastal highway lost its primacy, and with it, the steady stream of moviegoers who once filled the lots. Multiplex cinemas in Charlottetown and Summerside lured audiences away with bigger screens and air conditioning, causing drive-in attendance to drop by 70% through the 1990s. By 2002, only a single drive-in remained, and most of the iconic neon signs had been unplugged for good. Today, empty lots and weathered posts mark where crowds once gathered beneath the stars. The drive-in era on Prince Edward Island survives mainly in memory and faded photographs, a testament to how quickly technology and infrastructure can erase even the brightest chapters of shared cultural life. Number 2. The Muskoka Grand Resorts once defined the pinnacle of Canadian summer luxury. Along the tree-lined lakes of Ontario, a circuit of stately hotels and private clubs catered to a clientele that included 45% of the country's elite travelers by the early 1970s. These resorts, Windermere, Rousseau, Minette, offered more than just rooms. They promised a world of cedar verandas, afternoon teas, and regattas that drew politicians, business magnates, and visiting celebrities. Archival guest ledgers from 1905 onward show a steady rise in bookings, peaking in the decades when travel by rail and steamer made Muskoka the destination of choice for those seeking exclusivity within Canada's borders. But by 1974, the ground was shifting. The launch of direct charter flights to the Caribbean slashed demand for Muskoka's opulent retreats by 22% in a single season. As families and executives discovered turquoise waters and all-inclusive packages abroad. The Canadian government's 1986 luxury surtax, a 15% levy on high-end accommodations and amenities, further eroded the Muskoka clientele, who now faced a costlier, less private experience at home than they could find overseas. Resort archives record a drop in repeat bookings and a growing struggle to fill suites that once had waiting lists years long. As the global travel market opened and tax burdens rose, the Muskoka Grand Resorts lost their hold on the national imagination. Some properties adapted, converting to conference centers or condos, but the era of grand lakeside summer society faded. What remains is a patchwork of redeveloped shorelines, a handful of heritage buildings, and the lingering memory of a vanished golden age, when a Canadian vacation meant elegance, community, and a sense of belonging that now survives mostly in family albums and local lore. And finally, in first place, the Laurentian Borscht Belt stands as the vanished heart of Jewish Canadian summer. From the 1930s through the late 20th century, this stretch of Quebec's Laurentians blossomed into a cultural haven where more than 30 kosher hotels welcomed as many as 150,000 guests each season. Families from Montreal, Toronto, and beyond filled the lobbies and lakesides, drawn by the promise of Sabbath meals, Yiddish song, and a comedy circuit that launched Canadian legends. Comedians like Mo Weissman and Mort Sahl sharpened their acts in packed ballrooms, their routines echoing late into the night, while the scent of smoked fish and fresh rye bread drifted from the dining rooms. By 1975, at the region's peak, the Laurentian Borscht Belt was more than a vacation. It was a rite of passage, a living archive of language, humor, and tradition. But the forces that built this world soon began to unravel it. The rise of affordable air travel in the 1980s lured families south, while suburban assimilation and changing tastes thinned the crowds. By 1994, family bookings had plummeted by 42%, a figure that signaled the end of an era. The comedy stages fell silent, and the once bustling hotels stood empty, their guest books gathering dust. In 2002, the last kosher-certified hotel closed its doors, marking the final chapter in a story that had shaped generations. Today, the Laurentian Borscht Belt survives mainly in faded photographs, scattered property records, and the memories of those who spent childhood summers beside the lakes. The grand facades have crumbled, and wildflowers now carpet the sites where laughter once reigned. What remains is a bittersweet legacy, a reminder of how a vibrant cultural world can vanish almost overnight, leaving only echoes in the landscape and stories passed down through families. The rise and fall of the Laurentian Borscht Belt is not just a tale of lost hotels. It is a reflection on how identity, community, and memory are built, celebrated, and sometimes quietly erased. Across all 10 vanished vacation capitals, a single pattern endures. No destination is immune to the tides of change. Each lost resort, amusement park, and lakeside getaway reveals how economic shifts, new technologies, and evolving tastes can erase even the brightest landmarks from memory. These places remind us that leisure culture is both fragile and deeply woven into our shared history. The echoes of their summers still shape what we seek and what we lose.